So tell me, Austin, why did you start Decked Out Co?
I started Decked Out because, I wanted to do something, build something with my friends, and I wanted to make money in more of a non-traditional way, rather than having like a job where I'm getting paid, paycheck to paycheck. I wanted to take a bet on myself and see if I could, go out there and make money, without signing up for an actual job.
So tell me, Austin, what are your roles and responsibilities in Decked Out Co?
So since it's a small crew, it's just my partner and I, Carson. We have a lot of roles and responsibilities that we both have to take on. At the start, it was kind of just learning how to actually stain a deck, learning how to sell the deck, learning how to, communicate to the client the value that we were offering and why they should pay us to do it. And, just organizing, the equipment, supplies, stuff like that we need to do it. Now, as we moved into this year, I took on more of a marketing/sales role. So, I had to make ads for, the business. I had to post them on Facebook. I've been having to, post them on Facebook ads, paid ads, and, managing the Google business profile, driving around, doing quotes, and also still the operational part, actually staining the decks, communicating with our supplier, for the stain, making sure we have the right equipment, going to Home Depot or Home Hardware, etc. So yeah, pretty much just operational, marketing, sales, and pretty much everything. And my partner and I both share those responsibilities.
So Austin, how has owning a business boosted your communication skills?
So, a lot of the things we do, it's like, we're walking around neighborhoods doing door knocking or going out to meet a stranger and quoting them in their backyard. So I would say just, a lot of times we'll get there and we'll start, talking about, real stuff, like what's going on in the world or, just anything really, like sports, what's going on in the neighborhood, government, stuff like that. Just kind of trying to relate to them and just have a conversation with them to help them trust us. So I would say just being able to relate to strangers and, being able to figure out, how the customer's mind moves, and then also, learning, what do they actually want? What do they want their deck to look like? How can we help them get them there? Communicating across to them why they should pay us, X amount of money to do this service, why they should trust us. So yeah, I would say just communicating in general with adults who we, don't have that much in common with, but also communicating over value to them.
So after your results on the Myers-Briggs test, it says you were an ENTJ, which is also known as the commander. Do you think you define yourself as this?
I agree. And Jay, especially, if we're talking about the ambitiousness or the independence that an NJ person feels, I definitely feel independent. It's kind of why I started the whole thing is because, I don't know, I felt like I want to do something myself or, not by myself necessarily with friends, but, not relying on a big corporation, a big company to pay me. I thought, I could do this myself. Also ambitiousness as well, like, goes hand in hand with independence. I feel like I can do things independently, and I'm really ambitious about it in the sense that I'll have high hopes for myself to do something, and I'll have high expectations for myself to do something when others might not feel like it's realistic, or others might not feel like they can do it themselves. I'll definitely feel like I can.
So Austin, what are some of the core management practices you use for Decked Out Co?
So at the scale we're at now, we haven't really had to do much management. It's pretty much just me and my partner been working. Occasionally we will get, one or two guys in to help us out. and we're looking to hire our first full-time guy. But with the guys we have had in, typically the way that we're trying to effectively manage them is, we're not asking them to do anything that we wouldn't do ourselves. And we use the process of reciprocation a lot. So, let's say, and that is our plan for when we get a full-time guy in is, let's say, we have a project that we're doing and we want to get it done by, a Friday night or something. And, if the difference between us being done on a Friday night could be the difference between them working, hard and fast, or them, working at a normal speed or slower, then we could say something to them like, hey, if you get this done on Friday, we'll, bring some steaks and grill it up, or you can come to our house after, we'll grill up some steaks, free of charge, whatever it is. Or, if they're of age, say, yeah, we'll cover your beers for that night. So just stuff like that where, kind of like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but not in the monetary sense. We're not gonna be saying, hey, we'll give you an extra $50 if it's done by Friday, but more of a gesture like, hey, if we can get this done by Friday, then, we'll steaks for the boys, we'll cover it. So, just little things like that where they'll be motivated to do stuff for us better and faster, and we're going to reward them for that.
So what are your strongest management concepts at DeckDev?
So one of the things we like to do is we like to try to cluster jobs together. So rather than having a job in Penetanguishene and one in Barrie, and we have to do them in the same week, and you have to drive 40 minutes between the job sites if there's ever a piece of equipment forgotten on that one, or just if you finish one step on that job and you go to the next step on that job, it's a 40-minute drive. What we like to do is like to cluster jobs together. So if we have 2 or 3 jobs in Muskoka, we'll schedule them for the same week and a half window. Or if we have 2 jobs out in Wasaga, we'll schedule them the same time as well. So it's just benefiting from economies of scale, and having multiple jobs in one tight area where you can bounce between job sites and do what's needed and hopefully finish those jobs quicker.
So what are some business dilemmas that DeckDev Co. has faced?
When you run a business, you have to put out fires constantly. There's always stuff you have to deal with, and there's always stuff that, especially as an owner or, just the head of operations, it's always your responsibility to deal with stuff. So we've dealt with a number of things. For example, last year when we started out, we didn't really know how to stain decks, and we were just out there selling and trying to figure out how to do it. So we would sell a deck staining job, and then we'd get on the job site and we'd take way too long, or we wouldn't know how to do stuff. So, it would take longer than expected, or we'd be going back and forth to the hardware store all day getting stuff. Another thing we struggled with was, some of the people that we had in the start, they weren't really as committed. So, we had to cut certain people out of the business because they didn't have the same vision as us. They just weren't as committed, not showing up to work, or leaving midday to go golfing, or, stuff like that just isn't great. Then, there's the dilemma of selling. Like last year, we didn't really have much work lined up. We'd have days or weeks where we'd be sitting at home, and that was a massive dilemma we had last year. And then, this year we have dilemmas like, we have a lot more jobs this year, but a lot of the people we've quoted, for example, they'll ghost us after we quote them, and it's just, there's people who won't pay sometimes, which we've never had to deal with that personally, but that is something we may have to deal with at some point. Hiring people, managing people, workers not showing up, just a lot of stuff that you have to deal with, expenses blooming past the point of, what we expected them to be, and us making less profit on the job, or jobs taking longer than expected, or jobs taking shorter than expected, and then it looks like we overpriced. There's a million different things that can happen, and it's just about effectively managing that and trying to streamline the operation as much as possible.
So what are some intrinsic and extrinsic motivators you guys use at Deck.co?
So, we don't have any employees right now. We are looking to get an employee soon. But what we would be planning to do is, extrinsically is easy. It's like, a raise if they do good work, or let's say we get a few employees, the best one would, maybe get a raise to be a crew manager or something. That would be something extrinsic. Or, like I said earlier, the steak thing where, you give them steak at the end of the week or beers or whatever it is, or, bonuses, stuff like that. That's extrinsic motivation. But intrinsic would be making them feel like they're needed. It's like when you have a job, a lot of the time you're part of a large team that's under a large corporate net, versus since we're such a small team, one guy might make a lot of difference, especially if he's going out doing door-to-door, selling for us, stuff like that. And if we make him feel like, look, this is, you're not just a worker here, you're more of an entrepreneur, which is like someone who's an entrepreneur who's part of a small business that is growing rapidly. And that's something you get a lot of extrinsic motivation from, because you feel like you're part of a team, you feel like you're part of something greater than yourself. And that can also give you enjoyment too. You feel like, oh, I helped these guys a lot today, or these guys need me. These guys couldn't operate without me, or they'd be doing a lot less work without me. So that's something that you might not always feel in a job, but if you're a part of a small team like that, you might be able to feel that intrinsic motivation. That's what we're going to try to derive in our guys.
So what are some of the challenges you found running a partnership with Carson Michaels at Deck.co?
So something my dad always said is, the ideal number for a committee is any odd number below 3. So that leaves 1. And that's one of the things of running a partnership is, since we have 50-50 stake, and we're both the top decision makers, I can't, if we're both willing to, die on that sword of our decision, it's a complete 50-50, that could be a very hard thing to manage, and disagreements and stuff, because there is no person who's above the other. So, when we face, issues where it's like, I want to do one thing and he wants to do one thing, it can be kind of hard to settle, well, who's right, or whose decision should go through, or what should we do here? Versus, if I was the one guy running it, then whatever decision I wanted to make, I would do it myself. But the thing is, I'm glad it's like this, because, if it's only you making the decisions, then you're not testing those decisions against another person, and you might make the wrong decisions. So I'm glad that I have my partner, because, we bounce decisions off each other, we bounce ideas off each other, and in the end, you have 2 people filtering through the ideas versus 1. And I think that's led us to make better decisions in general.
So what are some of the key accomplishments you've made as a young business owner?
Well, I would say the main accomplishment we had recently was we had the general manager and owner of BMR Wasaga reach out to us, which BMR is a building supply store. It's like Home Depot, Home Hardware, the largest supplier of pressure treated wood in Canada. And he's the general manager for, the BMR in Wasaga as well as Elmdale, and he has ownership in both. And he reached out to us and he said that he wants us to become their official deck stain as they recommend. And this is a huge company. They got 15 to 30,000 customers coming in per month. So getting that recognition from a guy like that, we had lunch with him the other day. He's been all around the world doing business. He's done business in the Middle East, Europe. He's done business with FIFA, Nike, Gillette, these massive companies. And he's kind of settled down into a general manager role at, these big building hardware stores. So I would say just getting recognition from a guy like that, that's probably the biggest thing we've done as of recently. That was just yesterday. We had lunch with him. and we're really excited about that partnership. There's also some revenue numbers we've hit this year, which we're better than last year. We surpassed last year's revenue in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, which last year took us months to get that number. So that was nice as well. But yeah, tons of good stuff coming down the pipeline.
So what are some innovations you guys have created for Decked Out Co. in the deck staining world?
So to say that we've affected the deck staining world, I think would be a bit ambitious. I don't think anyone knows about this, that we do this, but an innovation that we had a few weeks ago, which has grossly upped our close rate when we actually got a quote, is I got this foam block and I drilled a bunch of holes into it. And then I got these little tiny vinaigrette bottles and filled it with all the stain colors, and then I kind of just placed them in all these holes in the foam block. So now when we go to a quote, we're not only able to, measure it up and give them a price on the spot, but we're also able to sand off a little bit of the deck and then show them, hey, this is what this color looks like, this is what this color looks like, this is what this color looks like. And then they can look at that and get an idea of, okay, my deck is gonna look, like this when it's done. Versus we just tell them a price and show them some photos online. A lot of the times they need extra proof, that, and they need that thing that's gonna show them, okay, this is, I know what other people's decks look like when the stain on. Now I know what my deck looks like, and I can extrapolate that and see, get a vision of how, my property's gonna look after I do this. So I would say that's the main thing we've done. We've innovated. Is this, I guess I wouldn't say it's a gadget, but it's just a system that we have where we can show clients, what the finished product's gonna look like before we even start work or get the deal.
So, thank you for your time, sir. There you have it, folks. The owner of Decked Out Co.